How do you keep your characters from sounding stiff or monologuing?
Mm.
Hank.
Oh man, try not to develop antagonists that twirl their mustache to begin with. Yeah. Oh,
You can
um,
totally do it.
yeah. I could before I shaved my beard and mustache. Um, mm, let's see how to one avoid monologuing altogether. It's find ways to show your character's motivation without them telling you their motivation. Um, find ways to have a character for them to dialogue with, um, so that their motivations come out naturally and not like you're holding someone hostage and you're monologuing to them before you execute them. Um, you know, realistic dialogue, characters that are motivated through believable circumstances, um, characters that are not two-dimensional paper antagonist. Um, I'm trying to think of a pithy example, and I'm just rambling around it trying to think of a good example. Um, you know,
Like a James Bond villain
yeah, like a
monologues,
James
right?
Bond villain would, don't do that. Don't do
First
that.
we come for Stephen King, then we come for oh, who wrote it? Who
Ian
wrote James
Fleming.
Bond? Ian Fleming, yeah.
Ian Fleming, yeah. Um, uh, the I had something on the tip of my tongue and I just lost it. Uh, we've talked before about how, your, every character in your story is the hero of their own story. So avoid making, black and white characters, good guys and bad guys. While there naturally will be characters in your story, who ultimately are the heroes or protagonists, and there are bad guys or antagonists, um, try not to group them into silos like that. Let your characters be a little more gray. Even good guys have questionable things about their character. Even Doug and I, don't come at us like that. And even
Stupid,
your
I am the hero.
antagonist, yeah, even your antagonist will have good qualities about them, or at least in their mind they do. Rarely do you ever see someone do heinous things just because they like to kill puppies. Most of the time, people are motivated because they feel like they're doing the right thing. As twisted as their motivations may be, in their mind, they're doing the right thing. So explore your characters in that way. Find ways that you can approach them so that at least in your character's mind, they believe they're doing the right thing, or at least doing a noble thing. They may know that it's the wrong. I would argue that, um, the big purple guy in the Marvel movies,
Thanos.
Thanos, thank you. Thanos knew he was doing something heinous. He knew he was gonna kill half of the population, but he believed that ultimately it would benefit whomever.
Yeah, the remaining
You can, yeah, you can argue whether, that was,
half.
that's neither here nor there, but in his mind, he thought he was ultimately serving humanity in some way, w knowing that what he had to do in the short term was diabolical. But in his mind, he had formed, some justification for that. So find ways that you can find some justification for your antagonist to do the things they do, and then the you being able to portray that will become much easier, and it will come in a way that just doesn't come off as monologuing. So, I feel like I didn't give you a specific example of how to do that, but I think just getting their motivations correct will will help that exponentially, because um you won't uh, be prone to just having them state what they believe. Their actions will show what they believe.
Just before, I'll give my input on that question too. But TW is asking, is monologuing the same as inside voice?
It
To a
can be.
degree,
Yeah.
But when we say monologuing versus internal monologuing, there
Right.
can be some differences.
Yeah.
Monologuing, like, is when it can be when you have, 3 paragraphs of dialogue from a character, that can be well done at times. Maybe I'm arguing that because I've done it at points, but I've also read it at points,
Yeah.
right? But it can be over the top, and you do
Yeah.
have to mind your pacing, and you have to mind action breaking that up. And is what you're writing strong enough to carry the fact that it's literally a page of dialogue of this person just speaking, not even speaking at someone, like just verbalizing their
Right.
thoughts.
I think the
Whereas,
worst case scenario of that is, I remember reading comic books when I was a kid, and Lex Luthor would have
yep.
Superman up against the wall with a piece of kryptonite that he was about to stab him with, and for whatever reason, in that moment, instead of stabbing him, he felt like he needed to, just go on this long monologue about how the world was gonna be better without him, and in the meantime, Superman had found a way to, you know, disarm him because he monologued for so long, he gave him that
Mhm.
opportunity. So, yeah, don't do that.
Now for an internal voice, I kind of want to break that into two different kinds of things. There's the narrative perspective, where the actual prose that you're writing is skewed by the perspective of the character is being told from, whether that's first person or third person limited. That usually you're not going to do any kind of monologuing in that, because you're still telling the story just through their perspective. But if you take, again, like 3 paragraphs just to give their internal thoughts on something without anything else happening around it, that can get a little droning. That can get a little, repetitive or dry or boring. So there are times when it's well done, and there are genres that are a little more tolerant of it than others. Like your literary fiction, you're very highbrow. I shouldn't say that, but like so the stuff I'm writing, I don't expect to win like a Pulitzer Prize, right?
Sure.
But the ones that do, the ones that can, might have that kind of internal monologue going for a whole page, because it is very artfully written, and every word has meaning behind it. But for most people, you aren't putting that intensive thought behind something. So you should really kind of step back and avoid that when possible for
Yeah.
monologuing. Um, Now, not to monologue some more, but I do have a couple points I want to say here, specifically about the sounding stiff. Because Hank, I think you did a thorough job of covering the monologuing part. But I want to lean on what you said too. I think there are two ways you can stop a character from sounding stiff. First, lean into that motivation that you mentioned,
Yeah.
Hank. Like, understand what your character wants and how they're getting it and why they want to get there. I always go back to that interview you had with Stephen James, where he talks about how in each scene he wants to understand what the character's motivation is. What do they want to get out of this scene by the time it's over?
Right.
And he writes from there. I think you embrace that same mindset with dialogue. Your character's speaking, what are they trying to get out of it? Are they trying, like, it could be as simple as warning someone, it could be relaying information, like it could be that simple, or it could be something a lot bigger, but you need to understand why they're doing that. And then the second part is their voice. And their voice is comprised of, their personality, their background, their social status, their fears, their desires, everything going on in here informs how they sound and how they narrate as well. Voice is a tricky thing to get right. I mean, that might be part of a fireside chat one day, writing that down. Um, but voice, like, that's what makes your character distinct. And we mentioned in the character development workshop, a perfect voice, if you've worked really hard on it, a reader should be able to determine in a lot of circumstances who's speaking without you attributing it to a character.
Right.
That's when you've really nailed voice. And when you've done that, the dialogue will sound less stiff, because you genuinely know how this character is going to react. Um,
Right.
and just, for tips on that one in particular, just listen to people, be a good listener,
Yeah.
and like figure out how they're communicating, what they're saying. I have a friend that says long story short all the time, even when the story's already short. Man, like, it's just chill. But that's part of his voice. That's what makes him unique. And if I put that kind of
Right.
almost like a tick in a character speaking, you would know, and that would start to feel a little more authentic if it's not overdone.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Love that.